Very good afternoon to everybody. The time has just gone 4 p.m. It is the 9th of March. Thanks for clicking on to the 132nd edition of Vogan's Global Weather Report, live from Mark Vogan Weather HQ here in Edmonton. Hope everybody is safe and well wherever you are this Sunday afternoon. This absolutely glorious weather through much of the day, but it is now starting to cloud over, it has to be said. And I think that is going to be the mark of change as we move through the next 24 hours or so. A big shock to the system, actually, as a much colder air moves southwards over the UK. So how is everybody doing? A very warm welcome to Paul James. Thanks for clicking on to today's stream, my friend, and thanks for moderating also. It is greatly appreciated. So, let's see who is going to join in this afternoon. We've got 7 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Be sure to hit that like button. It lets myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. So, certainly been very mild conditions over recent days. We've seen temperatures close to 20 Celsius through the course of this afternoon, I believe. Let me have a quick look and see what the current temperatures are looking like across the continent. Very, very mild, considering we are still in the first half of March. It really is unbelievable how mild it has been of late. But that's going to make for a bigger shock to the system, obviously, as we move through the course of the next few days. A very good afternoon to Lindsay through next door. Thanks for moderating today's stream. I greatly appreciate it, as always. Paul Farwell also tuning in. We've got Braemar, Ballard, D-side and Donside weather. Good afternoon to Chris, and good afternoon to have we got anybody else that I've missed so far? I don't think I have. So how is everybody doing this weekend? Are you enjoying the mild weather, or do you find it's come a little bit too early? I've said for quite a long time now that when you get these tastes of early spring, especially during the month of February or the beginning of March, you very often, more often than not, you get a burst of late winter chill to follow that. And certainly gardeners beware, we are going to see the return of frosts overnight. Now, obviously, through the first 5, 6, even 7 days of March, we've seen some fairly cold mornings, especially across more southern areas of the UK, thanks to clear skies, light winds, and that radiational cooling that's taking place during the overnight period in particular. Then in the afternoon, with the sunshine and with an early October strength sun, we've seen the temperatures respond very nicely indeed. This is a classic time of the year when you've got high pressure and control, especially with dry air also and a lack of wind. You see the temperatures cooling sharply once the sun sets, and then the rise often quite sharp once the sun rises in the morning time and into the afternoon. So this is the current temperatures across the continent. Very mild compared to normal for the 9th of March. That has been the story for the past several days, warmth dominating the European continent. This is the current temperatures across the UK at the moment here, and you can see 17s and 18s across the South Midlands and down in the south central areas of England. So places such as Benson and Oxfordshire, where we've seen 3 straight mornings below -5, I think it was, or -6 possibly. We're seeing temperatures into the high teens, and that is quite widely. Notice here along the east coast we've got the single figure highs. That's because we've got onshore breezes, and obviously the sea surface temperatures are essentially at the coldest at this stage in the calendar year. In terms of water temperatures then, let's have a quick look and see how chilly they are, because it's quite interesting to see the water temperatures at their lowest of the year. So we're talking about the 6s and 7s in terms of water temperature. So if you're dipping your big toe into that North Sea, it certainly will feel rather chilly, to say the least. And that is often the case during the month of March and even into the month of April, before we start to see the water temperatures begin to warm back up once again. Good afternoon to Katrine Thanks for tuning in, Katrina. Hope you're well. We've also got downstairs Dave tuning in. Good afternoon to yourself. Crazy amounts of rain down here in the south of Spain. Lots of snow on the tops of the mountains, Mark. Yes, that was certainly something that I thought would be the case. We've got colder air that's actually getting trained all the way from Greenland down over the North Atlantic, and with that area of low pressure deepening into the 970s and millibars, it's been dragging in some chilly air across the Iberian Peninsula and creating quite the nasty situation, really. Major flooding in some areas. We've got the widespread heavy rainfall, and also in moderate to high ground, we've got the snow accumulating over parts of Spain as well. So, yeah, let me just see here if there's anybody else. We've got 18 concurrent viewers at the moment. Be sure to hit that like button. It is greatly appreciated. And let me know how you're doing this afternoon. What are you having for your Sunday dinner tonight? We are having roast chicken. I'm looking forward to that. The oven has just been turned on, and that will be going in soon if it already hasn't been put into the oven. But yes, let me just see if there's anything else. So this is the current SSTs surrounding the UK and Ireland. We will be looking at the global picture in a little second or so here, so stay tuned for that. These are obviously the current temperatures, but we are going to start to see the temperatures coming down quite widely across the British Isles and Ireland in the coming days to come. We'll actually have a quick look at what the latest Met model is indicating. So we're going to have quite a big contrast between north and south during the course of tomorrow as the colder air moves south. I think this cloud that we're starting to see increasing above here in just north of Inverness, I think is the mark of that cold front that's going to be sinking southwards through the course of tonight. We're going to see the winds pick up and the temperatures drop. So 13 to 15 Celsius yesterday and today, probably only about 6 or 7 during the course of tomorrow afternoon here. So that's going to be a shock to the system. And then the further south you go, where you've got 16, 17, 18 Celsius during the course of this weekend, you're only going to be talking about temperatures 8, 9 Celsius. Not so much tomorrow, but Tuesday and beyond that is when we're going to see the temperatures drop into single figures in terms of maximum temperature. So, yeah, and that'll be slightly below average, whereas we've got significantly above average at this moment in time. Looking at the current radar then across the continent, and you can see there's that area of low pressure bringing all sorts of messy conditions across Spain and Portugal. We've got this area of low pressure that's dragging in some cold air, getting wrapped around the southern side of the low, and then moving across Spain and Portugal. If we look in close up, you can see some of these bigger, taller clouds. That is representative of thunderstorms. So we've got embedded heavy precipitation underneath these thunderheads as they move across the south of the country. Then you're seeing some more pop-up cumulonimbus clouds over parts of far eastern areas of Iberia, especially when you're getting some daytime heating at the surface where you've got the clear skies here. You're seeing the strengthening of the solar radiation penetrating the ground. You've got cold air in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. That's forcing the lift, creating and generating these thunderstorms across parts of eastern and northeastern Iberia. And where you find yourself underneath these, you're going to experience torrential rainfall and flash flooding. That is quite possible. We've got Ian Burks also tuning in. Good afternoon, Mark. Lovely and sunny in Derbyshire today, 17 Celsius. Been for a 5-mile walk. Certainly that is, you can't beat it, Ian, to be honest with you. We were about 16 miles away from the house. We took a little spin in the car, and it was nice just sitting on a park bench, sharing some chips. Well, I wasn't, Lindsay was enjoying the chips. I had a cup of coffee, and it was just lovely just sitting there and enjoying the warmth of the sun. It's been a long winter, and I think everybody is kind of ready for something a little bit warmer, drier, brighter after what has been a fairly long winter. So Paul says we had a Romanian dish for dinner, kualama. chicken in a creamy sauce with ma, ma, mamiglia, I think it is, which is boiled maize flour, and you have them together. Very nice. My good lady is Romanian. Very interesting, Paul, it must be said. I always like different dishes. That's what I quite enjoyed when we were in Malaysia. We were enjoying some various dishes. We had an Iraqi meal, we had a Syrian meal, we had Brazilian on the last day before we left for home. And it's always interesting to try different cuisines. And certainly, Paul, you'll be getting spoilt by Romanian cuisine if your good lady is from there. We've also got Soot tuning in. Good afternoon to Soot. Soot says, hello, hope you're well and enjoying your weekend. So let me see here. Let's go back to the European view here. So obviously high pressure is dominating the pattern. We're seeing a southeasterly flow pulling in some very warm air off the continent into the UK, and this is a pattern that really you wouldn't necessarily expect to see particularly mild air over much of the continent, but that is exactly what we're seeing at the moment here, is a pattern that in a sense is probably about where kind of you would expect more towards the beginning of April as opposed to the beginning of March. So we're a little bit ahead of the game in terms of the warmer conditions, not out of the out of the realm of possibility to see temperatures at or around 20 Celsius during the month of March. Usually you see it mid to late March, but it isn't completely out of the ordinary to see mild conditions and temperatures such as these. But certainly when you're talking about temperatures in the low to mid 20s across parts of Central Europe down towards the Balkan region, that is pretty warm for this time of the year, it has to be said. And some records have been broken due to unusually warm conditions. But this is going to be a real shock as the colder air comes back into play. And this has just been a story now, I think, not just for the last few months, but even beyond that. It feels like these big swings between, chill and unusual warmth, it seems to be more extreme fluctuations back and forward between both ends of the temperature ledger. That seems to be more of a thing now compared to back a number of years ago. I don't know if it's just my imagination or not, but certainly it's quite interesting to see how we go from exceptionally mild back to cold, back to mild, and it's these kind of fluctuations back and forward. But certainly Central and Eastern Europe, largely dominated by sunny skies and high pressure, and you can see the response when you look at the current temperatures. Let's have a quick look back at the current temperatures across the continent. So you're talking about temperatures in the mid to high teens widely, anywhere from northern France through the Low Countries, through much of Germany, into Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, across parts of central and southern Poland. We're seeing temperatures close to 20 Celsius. That's pretty darn warm for this time of the year. And then once you get down into the Balkan region here, we're talking about the low to mid 20s in a few spots. So pretty warm stuff. And then even if you look down into the north of Africa, we're talking about low 30s in central and southern Algeria, also southern portions of Tunisia. We're seeing temperatures into the low 30s. So hot stuff. So let me see here. We've got Frog's Legs, Matthew tuning in. Good afternoon to you. And is there anybody else that I have missed out on? Possibly not. Hopefully not. We'll crack on in just a second here. So that is the current temperature across the continent. We know it's mild at the moment. We know it's going to turn colder. We'll look at the models in a little second or so here. But let's have a quick look and see what the temperatures are like across the Atlantic and over North America. Very mild conditions across the majority of the United States, as can be seen here. The cold air is largely bottled up into the north of British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. We've got the cold really quite far north, actually, if you notice here. And that appears to be the dominant situation at the moment anyway. Looking down under in Australia then, and we have got Alfred that has made landfall on the east coast near Brisbane, we're seeing significant flooding as a consequence. We'll look at that in a little second as well. But you can see here temperatures. Obviously, this is you're talking early morning time, I think, down and across Australia. So generally temperatures kind of around 30, 31, 32 across central Australia. So that's a pretty hot start to the day, which would be Monday, obviously, down here. And looking at Brazil then, down in South America, we're talking about some pretty toasty numbers here. Quite widespread, mid-30s at the moment across the majority of Brazil. Little cooler once you get into Argentina, as can be seen here. So that is the temperatures across South America, Australia, North America, and across Europe. So this is the current temperature anomalies of the CDAS 0.5 data for the first 9 days of March. And you can see here that we've got areas of cold compared to average, and we've got warmth compared to average. Warmth probably outdoing the cold. That is not really a big surprise. It has been a chilly start to what has been a cold winter across parts of the Middle East and the central areas of Asia. We've been seeing, temperatures quite subdued, actually. If we look at the past 90 days of the model, you can see that it has been a colder than average period across parts of the Middle East, across much of central and western China. We've had below average. Across the United States, North America largely warmer than average, especially across Canada. But the southwest United States warmer than average, but we've had cooler areas. This is obviously the past 90 days. So if we look at Asia specifically, you can see here that China, Russia has been warmer than average. That has been the case for some time. But down across the Iberian Peninsula, Arabian Peninsula, not Iberian, the Arabian Peninsula, including Syria, Lebanon, Israel, into Iraq, Iran, up into the east of the Caspian, we've had colder than average conditions over the last 90 days or so. And then moving across to North America, this is the last 90 days. So Canada is firmly warmer than average in the last 90 days, including Greenland as well. We've had the central United States and east largely average to slightly below average, if you notice here. Looking at Europe over the last 90 days then, you can see that it has been largely where, in fact, is the colder than average. We don't really have an awful lot of colder than average apart from far eastern Turkey, for example. So that is quite a notable warm anomaly. Looking at South America over the last 90 days then, and we've got quite a standout contrast here. Firmly warmer than average across some of the eastern states of Brazil. Up into Amazonia, for example, it's actually around average here, which is quite interesting. We've got a couple of below average in northern portions of Argentina. Uruguay and Paraguay slightly below average over the last 90 days as well. Looking down under then, and it was a hot summer down across Australia. This is the last 90-day anomaly, firmly warmer than average, as can be seen here. Let's not forget our friends down in Africa then. The last 90 days has looked like this. Warmer than average across to the south of the equator. Then across the equatorial region, we've got close to average conditions here. Slightly cooler than average in sub-Saharan Africa, which is interesting. Then we've got an area of colder than average far western Algeria across the border into Morocco. And then the Arabian Peninsula, as you can see here, stands out colder than average, which is quite interesting. So looking at the month through the 9th of March, and you can see here for Africa, quite a standout cold than average. Look at Morocco, for example. Even the Canaries, I think, has been slightly below average. And looking up into the northeast of the continent, parts of Egypt, for example, and then across the Red Sea into northern portions of Saudi Arabia, into Iraq, Iran, and up into Uzbekistan and Afghanistan, we've got firmly colder than average conditions here. Looking at Europe then for the first 9 days, and really stands out the warm anomaly. Actually, we're losing the below average anomaly, if you notice here, across the southern UK, but the warmer than average stands out. And I've said that it's going to be a warmer than average March. I think that is likely to be the case, even with the cold air coming. I'm struggling to see how we're going to turn this anomaly around, to be honest with you. But you never know. Stranger things have happened. Looking at North America then, you can see here warmer than average, especially across Alaska. That is where the core of warmest conditions compared to average are, as well as across much of Canada. So again, like the last 90 days, it has been a warm old time across much of Canada. Colder than average across the southwest, warmer than average Rockies and the Plains. And then once you get east of the Mississippi, you can see here average to below average, a little bit warmer than average across parts of northeast PA, New Jersey, around the Long Island, up into Connecticut, Massachusetts. You can see here slightly warmer than average through the first 9 days of the month. Down into Florida, we've got below average conditions here as well. Looking then at Africa. Did we look at Africa? We did look at Africa. Looking at Australia then, you can see here again, warm start to autumn for Australia, as can be seen. And then let's have a quick look at South America. You can see here, again, that bullseye across central and eastern inland areas of Brazil. Vast area of Brazil is off to a very warm start to the month of March here, down in the northern portions of Argentina. So while obviously during the month of the past 90 days we had a cooler than average north and a warmer than average south of Argentina, it's actually turned on its head. If you notice here, slightly below average the further south you go, the warmer is the further north you go. Looking at where else was I want to show you then, let's have a look at Asia through the first 9 days, and again there's that below average. The warmth has been persistent across much of Russia, which is interesting. Up into the northeast of Siberia has been quite a cold start here. If you notice, we've got warmer than average through the Koreas and Japan, far eastern China, but the majority of China is actually colder than average to start the month of March, which is interesting. And then across much of India, the subcontinent, colder than average. Down into Southeast Asia, slightly warmer than average, as can be seen here. We have 20 concurrent viewers at the moment. If you're just joining in or you've been here all the time, thanks very much for tuning in to today's live stream. It is the 132nd edition of the Global Weather Report Live. I hope you're enjoying what you are seeing here on the channel. Have you subscribed to Marfo Weather here yet? If you haven't, there is still lots of content here to come as we progress through the month of March. We're going to be building the ideas with regards to the summer season. We're going to also be talking about the hurricane season as well. The possibility of an El Nino beginning to show up over that Nino region 1.2, which is closest to South America. We are really starting to see quite a warming taking place. Is this the sign of an El Nino trying to develop later on this year? Who knows? We've still got a lot of cold water close to the date line, which is interesting. So we've still got that Central Pacific La Nina signature, but we've seen a notable warming across the far East Pacific, which is something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on as we progress through the next wee while or so here. So I hope you can stick around, and we'll follow it day by day, week by week, as we go towards the warmer time once again. So let's have a quick look then. We did a quick tour there of the global anomalies. Let's have a look at the latest of the Met model and see what it's showing in terms of the temperatures. We will look at the snow prospects as well. Modelling isn't really overly enthusiastic. I don't think it's a particularly enthusiastic pattern in terms of snow projections, and that's been the case really for the past month or two here. Even the month of February has seen quite low amounts of snow, and that comes off what was a snowier than average January for the majority of the UK, believe it or not. I know folks in the south, for example, will say, snow? What snow? We never see really snow much now, and I feel your pain. It has been quite a tough time in terms of trying to get snow, especially across the far south of the UK. But this is the temperatures through the course of today, but let's skip right through into tomorrow morning. Now, obviously, we've got cloud, wind, and precipitation driving south. So we're not going to see particularly cold temperatures during the overnight tonight and into tomorrow. But we will notice a big shock compared to what was seen this afternoon versus tomorrow afternoon. It will be a notable change. And you can see that here as we move into the afternoon hours tomorrow. Still got 12, 13, 14 Celsius across the south. Further north, we're talking about temperatures stuck in the mid-single figures in a few spots. That is going to be quite the shock to the system, I think. And quite a big gradient here between north and south, if you notice here. So single-figure highs across the north, mid-teens across the south. We may even scrape a 16 or 17 tomorrow afternoon. That is a real possibility. So this is the temperatures according to the Met model here at 16Z tomorrow afternoon. Talking about only 1 Celsius in some places according to the model. This is raw model data. Obviously, you can't take these numbers literal and expect that's exactly what's going to happen. But nevertheless, you've got the temperatures into the low single figures across the far north of England. But down towards Liverpool, Manchester, you're talking about temperatures into the 11, 12 Celsius range. So depends on the position of that front by this stage tomorrow afternoon. That's going to be the thing. But as we continue to play through the loop, you notice here that we are starting to see minus figures appearing once again. By Tuesday morning, we could have widespread temperatures at or slightly below the freezing mark. And by this stage, tomorrow and Tuesday afternoon, should I say, these would be the temperatures. So we're talking about only 8s and 9s for maximums on Tuesday afternoon across the south, as opposed to 14, 15, 16 tomorrow afternoon. So the cold is present over Scotland tomorrow afternoon. By the time we reach Tuesday afternoon, it's going to be across the majority of the UK, and then play through the loop. You can see here some colder nights to come. We wouldn't be surprised if we see -5, -6. If we get the clear skies and the light winds during the overnight period. So we'll continue to watch as we go forward. In terms of the stratosphere then, let's have a quick look and see what the latest model is showing here with regards to that. Now, this is potentially the earliest final warming. So what we mean by the final warming within the stratosphere, once you start to get daylight return to the Arctic region, that then starts to warm the atmosphere up, and you eventually start to warm the stratosphere, and it stays that way. You lose the polar vortex altogether as you start to increase the amount of solar radiation reaching the Arctic region. That then weakens the polar vortex, and then it disappears until autumn. Once you start to lose the daylight once again, the cold builds, and you start to build up that vortex within the Arctic region, within the troposphere, but also up above it within the stratosphere as well. So looking at the latest run of the GFS model in terms of the 10 millibar level, this is how things are looking. We've got this strong warming now starting to show up over the top of the pole, and we'll play through this loop. You can see here that the polar vortex is essentially getting split according to the GFS. One piece into Europe, one piece into North America, and the question mark is going to be what follows that in terms of the atmospheric response down below the stratosphere. My hunch would be that we start to build pressure up into the Arctic region, and therefore we have more of a blocked pattern. It doesn't necessarily guarantee cold, but it means that we're likely to see a slowdown of the westerly flow in the mid latitudes. We've got more blocking setting up, and with blocking tends to be extremes in terms of mild versus cold. Depends on where you're positioned. You could be under that mild air mass, and it actually is quite pleasant conditions for the time of the year, but you get trapped underneath a lobe of cold air. It's a very different story, and you have wintry cold conditions. But you can see here as we play through the loop, the warming is now dominating the polar region here, with the vortex being blown apart here, and it looks as if it's not going to regroup towards the end of the month. There is a little bit of model speculation that the mean zonal winds, which eventually reverse at the 10 millibar level, that would constitute an official sudden stratospheric warming when the mean zonal wind surrounding that vortex weakens and actually reverses. So instead of going from west to east, it goes east to west. That would be the wind reversal. And when it stays in a reverse state, that means that you've essentially seen a final warming taking place within the stratosphere. But these final warmings, especially early on, tend to lead to more of a blocked pattern across the hemisphere. But it's not as simple as just saying we're going to get cold or we're going to get hot. It all depends on the position of these highs and lows and cold versus warm, etc. So, very good afternoon. Did I say hello to TurboStream? I don't know if I did. Good afternoon to TurboStream. It's good to see you here on today's live stream. Good also to see David Vogan tuning in from Kirkintilloch. Just home. Lovely day here in Kirkintilloch. Spring like 13 Celsius, says David. We have clouded over here in Edmonton, and I think that is going to mark the change to something colder, and eventually that is going to all push southwards over the next 24 to 36 hours. So, Dad, get the woolly hat back on. If you're out walking the dog at night, you are going to feel the chill coming back in once again after the very pleasant spring-like conditions that we have seen in recent days. It certainly has been some very soaking nights down in Glasgow, it must be said. Drive the lorry up and down between Inverness and Glasgow, and I noticed every time, almost like 3 nights in a row, every time I reached the Glasgow area, I'd seen them be chucking it down the rain, whereas up here, it's not been too bad, it has to be said. So, yeah, it looks as if the rain has been almost focusing through the Central Belt from based on what I've observed in the last few days. And he says also Mum as well. So I hope Mum and Dad are keeping well down in Turkey. And I hope you had a good service this morning and a good turnout. So let me see here. Let's have a quick look and see what the modelling is suggesting then for the next few days. Obviously, my hunch is going to be below average over the next 7 days or so. The question mark is going to be, does this cold linger through to the medium range, or does it disappear once again? That's going to be the thing. I'm not entirely sure about that. But if we look at the ensemble anyway here, which is the 5-day increments, and look at, let's have a quick look at the upper level chart first. It's the new one is updated, so we'll look at the 6Z one. So there's the core of the trough then, presenting that quite unsettled conditions, to say the least, across Spain and Portugal, even in the parts of France as well. There's the block and high up towards Iceland and Greenland. Also high pressure down across the southeast of the continent as well. But this is how the precipitation is looking over the next 7 days then. And you can see here, drier than average. Now this is coming off the back of what was a very dry February. So we'll watch in terms of soil moisture and whatnot. We're going to have to keep an eye on this, by the way, as we move towards the latter spring and into the early summertime. Once you start to dry those soils out, can have a response to the atmosphere above. But the very wet conditions in the next 7 days, according to the GFS ensemble, no surprise here, also extending into southern France, Italy, the Balkan region as well. But how's the temperatures looking in terms of the next 5 days then? So below average conditions across the UK and Ireland. Play through this loop, you notice here that we increase the chill even further. This is the 11th through the 16th of March. Continue to play through, so even all the way out to the 15th through the 20th, still holding on to colder than average conditions across the UK and Ireland here. Then it looks as if it's turning slightly warmer than average as we move towards the 20th through the 25th of the month. Let's look at our very own CFSV2. Tends to be a little biased towards warm. Certainly the day 8 through 15 is looking warmer than average, or average across the south at least. But even in the next 7 days, it's not actually overly enthusiastic in terms of showing much in the way of colder than average, if you notice here. Sorry, there's birds flying everywhere. It's catching my attention there. So, yeah, cold than average looks as if that's going to be the theme. Let's have a quick look then and see what the modelling is showing in terms of the overview chart then. This is the GFS. We'll look at the GFS first, looking at the Europe and North Atlantic view. So this is the overall setup as of 15 UTC today. So there's that area of high pressure, 1030 millibars, just to the southwest of Iceland. We've got an area of low pressure, 982 millibars, just to the west of Iberia. So that is your textbook classic negative North Atlantic oscillation when you've got a reversal of what you would typically expect to see. Lower pressure near Iceland, higher pressure down towards the Azores. We've got the opposite taking place at the moment. But obviously we're drawing that air in from the southeast, not cold source. We've got a lot of mild air over the continent. That's why we're seeing the temperatures getting into the high teens with the help of that strong strengthening early March sun. We're approaching the middle portions of March already. Hard to believe, isn't it? So let's play through the sequence. There's that cold front moving south in. And as we play through, we're seeing the colder air coming southwards once again. This is a dry northerly flow, but with a mix of rain low levels and sleet and snow at mid to high ground, especially across northern areas, but possibly into the eastern side of England. We may see some convective showers running that northerly wind over the next few days. And then we get a little bit of a northeasterly component to the flow. You can see here wintry showers showing up on the modelling anyway. And then we'll continue with this kind of slack northerly airstream coming in to the east of that area of high pressure over the North Atlantic here, which is quite interesting to see. Looks as if we then start to go towards more of a Scandi high as we move towards next weekend. So let's have a quick look and see what the 850s are showing here. So that, excuse me, that essentially shows you the type of air mass we're talking about. Mild at the moment, cold front moves south, we're in the colder air. During the course of the afternoon tomorrow, again, mid to high teens across the south, mid to upper single figures across the north in terms of the afternoon temperatures. Continue to play through, we still continue to see that cold airflow. Wednesday, winds turn more northeasterly. Continue to play it through. We're still in the cold air towards the weekend, next weekend, which is interesting. So the rest of the week stays cold, but notice here that we're starting to see something slightly milder towards the early portions of the following week, which is Tuesday the 18th. Long way out, but we've got cold air coming south over the eastern continent, milder air coming up from the south over the western side of the continent. We'll wait and see what happens. Let's have a quick look then at the ECMWF, and then we'll have a look at some of the extremes taking place around the world. It is a global weather report after all, so I don't want to just specifically look at Europe all the time. This is a window to look at the global picture, and it's always interesting to do that. So play through the ECMWF then. There's the colder air coming south. Continue with that northeasterly flow like the GFS. Thanks to that little circulation of milder air up towards Iceland and southern Greenland. That's acting as a wheel, a spoke, allowing that cold air to come southwards to the east of it. And the ECMWF holds that cold all the way through to the weekend. And then as we move towards the middle portions of next week, which is way out, there's actually no point in even looking at that because we know how unreliable that is. Quickly, let's have a quick look at the snow projections then. We'll look at the UK and Ireland specifically. And we'll have a look and see what the snow depth is showing. I'm not overly enthusiastic about this, it has to be said. But yeah, the ECMWF isn't too shy in dropping a little bit of snow on the ground anyway. You can see even into the southeast parts of Wales, the Midlands, up the spine of the Pennines, for example, and the north, seeing a little bit of snow. We've even got a little bit getting sniffed out here towards next weekend. Obviously, if you've got low pressure bumping into these colder air masses, you tend to get the wintry precipitation, especially overnight as well. It's harder to get snow, especially line snow. Yeah, you can get it through the, falling in the sky, out of the sky through the course of the daytime. But generally, falling and line snow at this stage in the year, you tend to want to get it during the overnight period when the surface cools down and allows that accumulating to take place. But yeah, the ECMWF is sniffing out some snow. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail in the next day or two here on the European outlook. Let's have a quick look at the GFS then real quick and see what it's indicating. Again, sniffing out some high ground snow. Scotland, parts of England, Wales. Is it seeing it across Ireland or Northern Ireland? Not really, according to the GFS model anyway. Let's have a quick look at it and see what the ARPEDGE model is indicating in terms of snow depth. play it through. It's not overly enthusiastic over the next 24-36 hours. Sniffing out something towards the middle portions of Wednesday, if you notice. Big amounts actually over the central Cairngorm Plateau region, but even across parts of High Ground of Wales, down into the Peak District of England, and over perhaps Exmoor or Dartmoor, it's sniffing out some sort of light accumulation of snow. So it'll be interesting to see over the next few days what happens with regards to snow. But chilly days and cold, frosty nights looks very likely indeed. So have I missed anything out? Let me just have a quick check, and then we will look at some of the extremes taking place around the world. We've seen obviously significant flooding in the Brisbane area and surrounding areas of that city on the east coast of Australia. Paul James says 21 Celsius recorded at Lakenheath Base, RAF base. That is interesting. So we've had the first 21 Celsius of the year. Is that today, Paul? I'm assuming it is today. Quite impressive stuff. Any idea, Mark, how long the cold air remains? That is very subject to question, Ian. I would suggest at least through this week we're going to remain chilly, but beyond that I'm not entirely sure, because it depends on where the high and the low moves and the distribution of the warm versus cold air. Quite complex to really pinpoint exactly. Certainly the modelling indicates that the next 5 to 7 days cold on average, then it might start to moderate slightly as we progress into week 2. So again, subject to change. Stay tuned in, watch the videos over the next few days, my friend, and I will try and answer that question a little bit more once the newer data comes out from the models. So let's have a quick look and see what has been taking place in terms of extremes. Then we will round things up. So this was the scene. We've had some major flooding in parts of Argentina, for example, and this is some of the flooding that has been taking place. No real surprise you get this, especially this time of the year when you've got a clash of air masses. You get these extreme flood events. This is the San Miguel de Tucumán region of Argentina. So certainly not a very nice scene here. This is a scene from Pasto Road. I'm trying to see where this is. Is this Argentina? This doesn't look particularly nice. Footage of a cow getting swept away through with the floodwaters. That's not a nice scene for sure. Severe flooding caused by Cyclone Alfred. Obviously, it is now dissipated and no longer a tropical system. But that is the mess that Alfred has left behind. Now, we've seen some epic flooding in recent times in parts of Queensland as it is. So this is actually just causing even more turmoil for parts of the region of northeast Australia. So let me see here if there's anything else. This is in Bahia Blanca, which is a region of Argentina. Again, probably a similar location to the other flood video that I just showed you. So quite nasty flooding in this region of Argentina. It says that 13 people have died, more than 1,300 residents evacuated, widespread destruction, including flooded hospitals, closed schools, suspended transport, and power outages, according to Perfil. That must be like a news outlet in Argentina. Let me see here if there's anything else that I can show you. Wildfires hit Long Island, New York. Evacuations ordered. So quite nasty situations in parts of the northeast United States, Long Island to be exact. So let me see here what else I can show you here. This is in Santiago de Chile, flooding here also. So many areas, several areas of South America seeing quite significant flooding at the moment, as can be seen in the Weather Monitor Twitter feed. This was the damage caused by Alfred. Tropical cyclone Alfred has caused widespread destruction along the Queensland and northern New South Wales coasts overnight. In the wake, approximately 293,000 homes are without power, nearly half of those on the Gold Coast. So, yeah, the good thing about it is that the winds did weaken as it approached the east coast of Australia. The only bad thing is the system actually slowed down in terms of its progress, and obviously a slowing down of a tropical system means that it dumps more rain over a given area. This is Almaty in Kazakhstan back on the 8th of March, which is yesterday, I believe, and heavy snowfall. Again, no surprise, it is early spring in Central Asia, and as a consequence you would expect to see significant snow and cold linger through the month of March. It has been quite mild in this part of the world in recent months, but the nice video there capturing the snow there. Interesting one here. This is a video of a roof getting ripped off due to Cyclone Alfred. I'm not sure if this is in location Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, so very nasty conditions here. This is interesting here. This is flooding in Baghdad, Iraq. So again, one of the hottest places in the world. It's been colder than average through March, and also the winter just gone, as explained. That is a nasty situation in Baghdad and Iraq, actually, which is you don't often see a scene like that in what is one of the driest parts of the world. And again, this is the Bahia Blanca region of Argentina. Very, very nasty flooding here, actually. So, yep, that is what is happening down in parts of South America. Is there anything else to show here? So let me have a quick showing of some of the warmth that we've been seeing across parts of the Balkan region of Europe in particular. This is an interesting one here by Milos Milik, based in Belgrade, Serbia. Very warm conditions. This is back on the 7th of March here, a couple of days ago. Very warm conditions for the first decade of March for the Balkan region, Skopje. I hope that's the right pronunciation there. But anyway, 26 Celsius in eastern portions of the Balkan region here. We're seeing exceptional mid to even slightly high 20s showing up. But this is the temperature normally back on the 7th of March here. Real warmth dominating the majority of the continent here. And big fluctuations under that, clear skies, light winds, and very dry air means that it heats and it cools very quickly. Skopje, a low of minus 2.3. Then the afternoon, it rose to 26.3. That is a diurnal fluctuation, isn't it? Massive change between day and night, in this region here. So let me see here. Let's have a quick look at Thierry Goose's Twitter feed, because always interesting information here. And then we'll round up. But a massive thank you to everybody for tuning in to today's content. I hope you've enjoyed it. And but we're not quite done just yet, so just bear with a second here. It's just going on 48 minutes past 4 in the afternoon here in Edmonton, Russia, live. You can see here heavy snowfall in parts of southwestern British Columbia. Beautiful scenes here of the big snows in this part of North America, which has been fairly mild in recent days. Denmark, highest temperature ever recorded in Denmark so early in the month of March. A high of 18.6 at Boris. We had 21 in Germany. We had 20.1 in Belgium, with 20 in Deelen in the Netherlands, and Pinsk in Belarus, 19.6. And according to our very good friend Paul James, we had a 21 Celsius this afternoon in Lakenheath RAF base, which is pretty impressive stuff for the first half of March. It has to be said. Let me see here what else I can show. So, abnormally warm conditions across much of Europe, like I've already explained. Let me just see if there's anything else. Extraordinary heat, especially enhanced by the Fern effect in Mexico. Back on the 4th of March, we had a temperature of 47.5 at the Galinas. Highest temperature ever recorded so early in the month of March for the entire northern hemisphere, and only 0.5 below the March Mexico national record. So temperatures back a few days ago as high as 47.5. Again, like I've said, the hottest temperature for this early in the season anywhere in the northern hemisphere. Fascinating stuff. We had the temperature as high as 24.1 in parts of Austria in recent days. Very toasty conditions. And then we're starting to see the cold increase over the South Pole. Obviously, we're seeing the beginnings of spring and the warming take place and record warmth in parts of the northern hemisphere, but we're starting to lose daylight down across our Antarctica, for example. And I'll tell you what, minus 64.7 Celsius is pretty darn cold for this early in the autumn down in Antarctica. I was going to say Argentina there, which is very cold for early March. For reference, this is equivalent to the February record. And on the other hand, it was minus 68.1 exactly 2 years ago, back on the 6th of March 2023, probably a record for early March. So temperatures unusually cold to start off March down on the continent of Antarctica. Record-breaking heat then across parts of South America. March records achieved in Argentina as high as 43.3 Celsius. Play it through here. We had a very interesting contrast in February across parts of Canada. Unusually cold across parts of southern British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba. But we had unusually warm conditions the further north you went up towards Arctic, up into Arctic Canada. The winter of 2024, this is an interesting one. The winter of 2024-25 was the coldest winter in the United States since the polar vortex winter of 2013-14. So, it hasn't been a brutal winter by any stretch, but it is, in fact, the coldest winter for the United States in over a decade, which is interesting. This is what I'm talking about here. So this is a tweet here by Patrick Duplessis, I think it is. February 25 was colder than normal for most Canadians, up to more than 6 below the 91 to 2020 average for southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. Meanwhile, record warmest February up in Resolute and Alert, up in the Northwest Territories or Nunavut Territories. Quite contrasting February for Canada. Looking further on then, I'm trying to see if there's anything else to show. Unusually cold across parts of Quebec and Ontario. This was back at the very beginning of March. So, I think I've covered most things. Wait a minute, just a second. We've got the temperature as high as 45.7 Celsius. Hottest March day on record for northern territories of Australia, which is interesting. So, very hot start to Australia. Australia's autumn season in central areas of the country in particular, mid to high 40s. So I think I've covered everything I needed to cover in today's live stream. I hope you can join me again next week, probably the same time as usual, 4 p.m. And obviously through the upcoming week, we're going to be looking at the cold air coming south, the prospects of snow, how cold by day and by night. We're going to be looking at that in quite a wee bit of detail coming up. So I hope you can stick around. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. Absolutely free content 6 days a week. Unbiased, unhyped weather content here on YouTube. A massive thank you to everybody for their ongoing support. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon, the rest of your weekend. Let me just see here if anybody else. A massive thank you to the moderators for their support ongoing, not just this afternoon, but overall a massive thank you to everybody and to the moderators. We've got Paul, and we've got Lindsay moderating today's stream. So a massive thank you to that. So let me just see here. A massive thank you to Paul James, to Katrine, to Turbo Stream, to Ian Burks for tuning in. David and Joyce Vogan down in Kirkintilloch. Who else have we got here? We've got Soot, Frog's Legs, Matthew for tuning in. Massive thank you to Braemar, Ballard, D-Side and Donside Weather for tuning in. As always, thanks for your ongoing support, my friend. Hope you are keeping well. And also have a fantastic time in LA. I believe Chris is going to be travelling out there soon, enjoying hopefully some warm sunshine in sunny Southern California in the coming days. I think I can't remember exactly when you're going to Southern Cali, but anyway, that is it for today and for today's stream. Thanks for everybody's for their support. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow with the European outlook. So stay tuned for that. And also, before you leave, please hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. Bye bye.